Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to another community office hour session. Today, we are joined by not one, but two teams, and arguably two of the most popular teams around. Today, I've got the Infra Client and Server teams here for our office hour session. And I'm so happy you all have joined and taken time out of your days to chat with the community and answer some community questions and talk about what's coming up with the product. So without further ado, I know this is the first time a lot of you have seen the majority of these teams, their faces. So let's go and do like a round table type of brief introduction and just kind of get acquainted, if you will. So, of course, everybody knows me. I'm Kaya Devrel here at Chef, and I'm your host of Community Office Hour Sessions. And let's go with you, Corey. You start us off with an intro.
Yes, I'm Corey, aka Stromweld on the Chef Community Slack. I've been using Chef since 2014 as a practitioner at various companies, and about a year ago started with Chef, and now I'm on the customer success management team as a customer architect.
Sweet. Awesome. How about you, John?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm John McCray. I started at Chef in 2013, and I was in IT at one point, and then moved over to work for Prajakta on the Chef Infra team. And yeah, that's me.
Sweet. Awesome. Sudarshan, you're up next.
Hey everybody, I'm Sudarshan. I'm from the product management team. I'm the only non-engineer here in the space. I'm the product manager for Chef Infra and Chef Client, and Chef Server, Chef Client. So happy to meet you all. Looking forward to see the interactions. Please keep pouring in the comments. We will try to address as many as we can. And I've been with Chef of the acquisition with Progress. I was employed with Progress prior to the acquisition, and yeah, I've been with Progress for a while now, for a little more than 3 years. So, yep, that's me here.
Awesome. Product matters. Neha, what about you?
Hey everyone, I'm Neha. I'm working as a senior software engineer for Infra Client team, and I have been with Chef or Progress for a year and a half.
Nice. Sadir, you're up next.
Hi, Ad. I'm working as a software engineer for the Chef Server engineering team. I have been with Chef from past 1 year.
Awesome. Vinay?
Hey, hello everyone. So I've been with Progress a little more than 2 years, currently working as a senior software engineer on Chef Server. So yeah, that's a brief introduction about me.
Awesome. Thomas, how about you?
Hi, Thomas Powell. I apparently joined almost exactly 1 year ago with Chef. So I've been working on Chef Client since, trying to dig into some interesting problems and still learn various nooks and crannies about the product.
Great stuff. Prajakta?
Hello, I'm Prajakta. I am currently the engineering manager for Infra Server and Infra Client. I have been here with Chef for close to 10 years, or a little more than 10 years. So it's been a long journey.
Yeah, 10 years is a good minute.
Yeah.
Lincoln, what about you?
Hello, my name is Lincoln. I work with the Infra Server team. I've worked at Chef for about 4 or 5 years, I think. Have a background in Erlang, Ruby, and a few dozen other languages. Jack of all trades, master of only a few. So.
All good. Thanks for that. Mark.
Hey folks, Mark Paradise. I've been with Opcode and Chef and Progress since 2011. Principal engineer currently, started as a software engineer and worked my way up.
Great. So we've got some veterans, John, Prajakta, and Mark are all about 10 plus years in. Like that's awesome. Cool. So before we get into the content of today's office hour session, I want to start with some pre-flight checks, as we always do. If you are not following us on Twitter, you should be. On Twitter, you'll find just information about content that's coming down the pipeline, things that we are doing as a team here, and you'll be able to interact with us on social. If you would like your questions answered on this live channel, in addition to putting them in the comments, like being here live and putting them in the comments, you can also check out discourse.chef.io, because we pull questions from discourse all the time for these types of things. And also our community Slack, community or chefcommunity.slack.com, on the Chef Infra Dev and Chef Server channels. You can post questions, interact with these good folks, and also just ask whatever types of questions that you have. And generally, there will be somebody that's going to be able to answer those questions for you. And so far, the most active person answering questions at this point is Corey. So shout out to Corey for being like the point of contact for a lot of the questions that are getting asked in the community Slack. So let's jump in. We've gotten to meet the team. Let me share my screen now so that we can go through client news and updates. And I think, Darshan, are you going to be the one that is leading us through that? Because if so, I will remove myself from the stream and add you.
Yes. So yeah, I'll give the introductions and set the stage, and then I'll leave it to the team here, and then continue with the rest of the presentation. So yeah, so we'll begin with some updates. It's been quite exciting couple of months this year. Ever since we started this year, we have been having renewed focus in consolidating a lot of releases that we do, and dependency upgrades and all of those things. And you will also see that the team has been quite involved in going down a lot of rabbit holes and fixing some very interesting issues. So what have we been doing from an infra client standpoint? The latest release that we did was 18.2.7, and yeah, there were a whole bunch of issues that got fixes into them, but I want to specifically talk about something called as the Yajal issue. So you will have a lot more updates from it in the next couple of slides. We'll have Thomas, I believe, will be explaining in detail about them. And then these are all some of the very interesting use cases that prop up because of the beauty of infra client, and that is also reinforcements for us to know that Infra Client as a tool is very ubiquitous and is used in a variety of environments. So it keeps us on our toes. And from a product side, it gives a lot of encouragement to see that when customers report such issues, it becomes a lot more validation in terms of how much more reinforcement we should be having in terms of our focus and renewed systems in which we have to prioritize stuff for people. And then we did a whole bunch of upgrades. A lot of dependencies received a bump up. You can go through the release notes in detail, but some of the stuff like Proxyfire was very crucial. It was blocking a lot of people into working with the latest upgrade. So that was something that works there. And then we also made some specific changes to these certificate systems, like we changed some of the encryption systems within the Windows certificates and other things. Again, you will be hearing a lot more in detail about it in the next couple of slides. We'll have it explained by the team. So similar to that, we had a very crucial upgrade for our Habitat customers. The attributes had an issue of how they were getting loaded up from within the Habitat environments for the supervisor and other things. So we had updates for that too that happening. But that's all that happened in the very recent past. But what's coming up in the very immediate future for Infra Client? As you all know, we haven't released an support for the AX platforms for the client 18.x series. So we'll be doing that shortly. And then we are also planning to add support to the RHEL 9 platforms. So these are very crucial items that we are working on. We understand that a lot of customers and community members who need the support on these platforms so that they can upgrade and start utilizing it, the 18.x series there. So that is top on priority for us. So we are actively working on that, and you will see updates around this area in the very near future. That's with Infra Client. I want to give some updates around the Infra Server side. Kia? Oh God, I think you might have to jump some slides. The original assumption was that I'll be here for the whole time. Can you jump to slide 32, I believe? Some more. Some more. Directly go to the Infra Server update slide. Or if you can exit the slideshow mode and then come back, I think it'll be there clubbed up together at the top. Bear with us, folks. You can all blame it on me. I come with decks everywhere I go, unfortunately. So bear with us. It's the bane and the boon of the job.
I think we made some last minute switches too.
Yeah. Kia, you're on mute. We can't hear you if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I am doing my best to get this, what is it, 32, you said?
Yeah, or you can just exit slideshow and then come back to slideshow. You would see the updated slides. We've just rearranged a bit because, hey, the original assumption was that I will be there through the deck.
Yeah.
Like to
And
live
now
on the edge.
we are juggling people between on stage and backstage. So
Right, exactly. So let's go here.
Yeah, it should be slide 5, I think.
yes.
Well, since I am on my hotspot, so it is taking forever to come back around. So
Or
I'm
we can do one
just
thing.
going to
I can share my
here.
screen and
I have it. Is that good?
beautiful.
Okay,
Can you go
see
to the
it?
next slide?
Okay. Yes.
So
Okay,
the
we're back.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Kia. Thanks for moving things around. So the Infra Server team has been working on quite a bit of exciting things. One of the major things that happened in the last release that we did was the JRE version was receiving an upgrade. This was primarily needed by a lot of our community users and our customers because of certain CVEs that were identified in the prior versions of JRE. So the team really cracked it up and made the upgrade and dependency testing and all of those things happen in place, and we made the release that. And what's coming up? This is a very interesting project, and that's very dear and close to my heart. This is something called as Project Courier. This is our new initiative that we are going to be working actively on for job orchestrations. Unfortunately, since this is work in progress, there's a lot in flight at this point of time. But if any of you is interested to know specific details about this particular project, what kind of orchestration we are talking about, what are the abilities, what kind of jobs we are talking about, what is it? Is it ad hoc or anything of that sort? Just hit me up. You can hit me up in community Slack, or you can just email me directly at skk@progress.com. I'm happy to have a detailed conversation with anybody who's interested. So I don't want to derail the office hours with a presentation and bore everybody. So I'll stop with that. Again, Project Courier, if anybody is interested, just hit me up, and I'm happy to explain in detail how with as many details as possible. So that's it about from me from an update standpoint. So you will be hearing very specific details about some of the things that I mentioned now. There will be some walkthrough on detailed insights of some of the issues here by the team. So watch out for interesting, juicy bit details. So back to you, Kia. And yes, I'm happy to get pushed out back into backstage.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you so much, Sudarshan, for that overview of what's coming down the pipe for the teams and for the product. I've got the other deck pulled. It's pulling up. It's taking forever, but does somebody else have it pulled up so we can kind of get into our next segment? Is that going to be for Infra Insights or Infra Client Insights? Is that what's?
Let's see. I think it should be me, but
Okay, let me see. I can go back. Let's see, because yeah, my stop sharing.
Okay. If you're having trouble, I think one of us should be able to share.
I feel like I have Infra Client Insights pulled up properly. Let's see that. Let me try to present. Share my screen here. Thank you all for being so patient with us as we go through these technical difficulties. Is somebody else? Let's see. Present. Share screen. Share. Okay.
Yep. That looks. Yep, that's me.
Sweet.
All right.
All right.
I guess I just signal next slide for you, huh?
Yes, the signal
all right.
next slide.
All right. So going to try to do
Ooh.
nice. That's awesome.
Okay. What's going on here?
I
think it's because I tried to refresh. Look, my computer is like, you're trying to ask me to do too much on this.
We can't even blame Sudarshan anymore. He's dropped off.
Mark?
I was saying we can't even blame Sudarshan anymore. He's dropped off the call.
Right.
Let's
right.
See,
Hold on, I'm coming back now. I think I'm actually in a good place because it refreshed.
Okay.
So share screen. Okay. Boom.
Okay. So slide 5. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to try to do as quick a run through of the FFI Agile error in Chef 18 as possible. It all boils down to some memory management and corruption issues, but it took a long journey to get there. Next. Or is it? Okay. So who was impacted by this? Customers using Windows would get intermittent JSON parsing errors after PowerShell calls. Now, the challenge with that is there are quite a few PowerShell calls that happen behind the scenes, regardless of whether you explicitly include them in your recipes. And so ultimately the failure rate was relatively low, but the number of PowerShell calls made for a complete apply, made the Windows runs fail rate near or sometimes greater than 100% failure rate. So, and that's the ultimate impact. So that basically blocked us from really getting widespread distribution for Windows customers. Next.
Okay.
Okay, so a couple of symptoms manifest here. Mostly, I think everybody the reason why it was named FFI Agile is because the main symptom was that it was a FFI Agile parser error, invalid character, or something to that effect. And basically, this JSON parser would just it would be trying to interpret the string as JSON, and it would just blow up because usually it would be some extended character, not even like a human readable character. Another symptom that occasionally happened is that you would actually get the undefined method brackets for nil class. That would happen if wherever we ended up pointing to was essentially completely null values from that memory pointer on. Next. So one of the fun parts about this initially was had everybody scratching their head was FFI Agile was complaining because it was getting bad data, but because it was the one that got the bad data, it was the one that would raise the errors. So there was a lot of focus in and around that component, like what's going on with it, why is it broken. What's interesting is also when you try to actually reproduce it on a local box just doing a Chef client, generally would fail to reproduce. One of the reasons, going back to the low failure rate. So if you didn't run enough calls, then it wouldn't actually trigger the failure because you had to have several different calls before it would actually trigger. I was able to find eventually that Windows 10 was fairly consistent in triggering it through the test suite run, but even after slight modifications to try to troubleshoot, I could no longer get it to fail. So there, and this is very typical of like a memory corruption overrun type of error. Like if you move any one bit, then it stops presenting the same symptom. Next.
Let me interrupt you for a brief moment. We got a question from the community. Bart VFF asks, is this problem limited to Chef Client 18?
Yes, it is, and there's a very specific reason, and it boils down to how Ruby is built in Ruby in Chef 18, which had to upgrade to Ruby 3.1 to get the support there versus 17 and before were 3.0 and before. Those were two different runtime platforms, and that'll be mentioned on the later slide here.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, next slide.
So pulled in the Chef the Chef PowerShell gem into Chef to build it alongside, and we were able to trigger as I mentioned, some of those test failures, but ultimately those stopped failing just and by nature of actually just moving things around slightly. It just wasn't hitting the same problem area. But that wasn't a fix. That was just kind of sweeping it across the room kind of thing. There's some module variables that were left there, and I thought maybe those were getting overwritten, and so those are getting corrupted. But the problem is, for FFI calls, you actually have to actually use that strategy to get the function that you're trying to invoke externally to attach to a Ruby space. So that kind of failed. I tried like just immediately duplicating the memory so that it like grab a copy before it gets whisked out from under me. Ultimately, it was too late at that point. So next. There were some other things, like because I knew that the memory was not in the place that it was expected to be, whether it was getting overwritten or we were just pointing to the wrong place. So I tried a strategy of turning off address space layout randomization. This is kind of related to some of the problems that we had with FIPS. Where the signature was wrong because the DLL got moved. I was wondering if maybe that's the problem. That didn't turn out to be the thing. I also tried different ways of unwrapping the managed code that was getting returned from C into different, like a static wide string in C++, and there were no impacts from there. Next. So one just off the wall thing that I tried next is, what if I just create this fairly substantial block of memory via this FFI gem, but allocate it from Ruby so I know that's good. At least I know that I have track of the memory. I allocated a 10 meg, which is fairly large for most applications, and so I pre-allocated that. I actually passed it to the function that in C++ and Microsoft Visual C++ that was getting called, and let it copy its data into that pointer, and it was fairly. It was successful, basically 100% success, but that is the caveat there is, well, that's within the bounds of our test suite's usage. And just because our test suite covers, or 10 megabytes covers the test suite, doesn't necessarily mean that all cases out in the wild would. Because like if you were to do something like just get a directory tree from root and try to ingest that, that would be well over 10 meg. Next. Right. So we don't know the size of the data that's going to need to be returned. Next. So the ultimate strategy here was we created an allocation callback. You can actually create a function block in Ruby that looks like that can be presented like a C style function, and pass that function over to the FFI function on the other end, whatever you're trying to talk to. And then within the block that's declaring that, we allocate an FFI memory pointer. Now we receive, in that block, we actually receive what size we want to allocate. So this will be a callback that the external interface can say, okay, this is exactly how much I want. And so on the other side, it says, okay, allocate output +1, which is like standard string with a null terminator, and then multiply it by the size of wide character, because the strings that are managed on the Windows side in C++ are 16 bytes, or 16 bits, not 8 bits. And then there's some magic that has to happen with, well, you're in C# and then you're in C, and they're both actually, there's two managed platforms there, and you have to unwrap it a couple times and then copy that memory pointer to this pointer that we've declared through the callback. Next. So back to the question, well, is it just a Chef 18? Yeah. So Chef 18 needed to do a Ruby 3.0 to 3.1 upgrade. We've hit a few snags because of this. FIPS, as I mentioned, was another instance. In the FIPS case, it was actually honoring address space layout randomization. So the DLLs would load in random places, and we had to lock it down to actually load the same place every time because of the signature involved there. This case, there was another fun thing. Apparently, when you have two say executables, it's like DLL executable, whatever, if they are not loaded by the same load routine, they have different heap spaces, which manages the memory that they allocate. And when you try to talk across them, that information gets lost. And so there's probably some restructuring that could be done to minimize that instead of having to do a callback, but that would probably take a decent amount of restructuring of the code and how it's compiled and everything else. This callback strategy was a much more straightforward way to make that happen, because we know the Ruby code, the Ruby process is responsible for allocating the memory that it ultimately wants to use anyway. Next. So we have a couple of, these are the two PRs. Actually, that first link, there's a lot of detail. Basically this presentation is in that, including all the failed attempts I mentioned as bullet points. So if you want to actually see the gory details of everything that needed to change to make this work, that first PR actually will do it. The second one, there were some leftover Chef PowerShell artifacts in Chef as well that needed to be removed to fully utilize this, but it's mostly just the bump of the gem in the first PR. I think that's it. Next.
Okay, and for everybody who is watching, we'll share the deck in the comments or in the description in the YouTube video. So go to YouTube and look for the deck.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My discussion point today is about certificates and Windows. We had originally created an initiative called No Certs on Disk. And I'll explain in a minute more what that means. Could you hit next? Okay, let's go next. Let's dive in. Okay, so at some point in the past, we've been using, well, always with Chef, we've been using private keys, PEM files, to make it easy for you to connect to the Chef server, identify the node, and secure the node with, right? Super easy to use, and the problem with that though is that managing multiple identities can be tricky, and also it's not CIS compliant. What we started experiencing a couple of years ago was larger customers were asking us for a more secure way to secure the system, because PEM files on disk don't pass security sweeps, right? So we undertook a mechanism to be more secure and move certificates into a more robust, maybe more reusable pattern. Next. And so what we came up with was an initiative we called No Certs on Disk. And what we discovered was that it was possible to have or move a PEM file to a private store, either in the Windows Certificate Store or the key store from Macs. So you could store a private key initially, or not. You could store the private key for the node securely and still be compliant with all the various benchmarks. And for different reasons at the time, we put Windows first. Next. There we go. So just to give you an idea what happens when you start the process, you'll set a switch in the client RB file, and that tells Chef client that it wants to move from a private PEM file to a Windows certificate store based key. And so what we'll do is we'll create a PFX P12 file. We store that in the certificate store in Windows, and then to secure the private key, we'll also generate a password and store that in the registry as using a hash, so that it cannot be decrypted or used without outside of Chef. And then when we do finally, then once we create the new private key, we'll go update the Chef server with the new private key and delete the old one, the old PEM file you were using before. Can you hit next? So we had a small issue with that. What we discovered after customers started using it was that we hadn't accounted for multiple identities in how people multiple identities and how people approach using a server. So there's two scenarios that were really broken. One was where an administrator would log on, set the node up for a Chef client run, and then would turn the node over to like a system account. Or if two users, let's say Bob and Karen, use the same node, and as soon as Bob logged in, the Chef client run would work once great, but then not after that, because the keys were all assigned to Bob's registry hive. Next. So yeah, there we go. We're just more of the same thing. So the big problem here was that we were using PowerShell scripts under the hood using can both convert to and convert from secure string. The main issue here is that these bits of PowerShell code rely on DPAPI, which bypasses use of symmetric keys and initialization vectors and uses your password instead. And so like what happens is the string, in other words, the password for the certificate would be captured and secured with the first person's password, and therefore guaranteeing that nobody else could use it. Can we hit next? So the solution then was for us to move to using symmetric encryption. And what we do here instead is we create an initialization vector and a password, and then we store those in an encrypted registry hive and pull them back out later to decrypt and use to retrieve the password for the private key, and then we can execute from there. Can you hit next? And now here we see we're creating the password. What you'll see is that we store the password. The password used to secure the private key with is stored in the Windows registry under the Progress Authentication Hive, and it's a random generated password locally that's at least 14 characters in size. And so we've chosen to make it at least 14, and we'll probably move it to something larger, like 20 characters at some point, to make it almost impossible to break out. Excuse me, or to try and hack. And then you'll see that we're storing them as PFX pass, PFX key in the initialization vector, and then returning that out. Okay, next slide. So this is working great now. Customers have confirmed that now the new methodology for securing certificates works great. The problem is you'll see I have mixed PowerShell and Ruby code there. So we want to move to using all Ruby code and get rid of the PowerShell. And then after that, then we want to move to securing certificates as well with on Macintoshes, Mac OS. And then finally, the last thing we sort of mulling over, but don't have a good story for yet, is how to secure a PEM file or what can you use as a key store on Linux nodes, because there isn't really a built-in mechanism. And so that's something we're going to have to noodle over and figure out how we're going to overcome that. And that's me.
I had a question for you on that, John.
Yeah.
How did we handle transitioning? So we have these, prior to this fix, we have these passwords stored in a different way. And then we need to migrate in some way. So how do we transition that from the old storage to the new?
Oh, yeah, Mark, that's a great question. So I built in some code so that if you were using the old existing system to store your password, the new code will look at that and transition you seamlessly. So you would be moved automatically from the old mechanism to using a symmetric encryption key.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this is you.
Okay. I'll have to share my screen.
If you I'll move my screen then.
After Neha gives us a walkthrough, we'll move over to some of the community questions.
Is it visible?
I don't see your screen up here.
Not yet.
Are you having to do? There might be like some settings that you have to play
Yeah,
with.
I had to, but I'm not sure. Let me try again. Just give me a minute.
Okay. Maybe while Neha's getting her screen situated, we can move into a community question since we've got
Sure.
we've got about 13 minutes left on our time. So let's see. Okay. I had the actual people who were writing these questions so I could call them out, but I don't see them on this deck. But first community question: while running Chef Client, the following command, the following warning shows. I want to create a file using a test recipe, but it gives a warning, and I'm new to Chef. What should I do? Who can answer this question for this community member?
Yeah, I'll go for this one. So in this case, the person has provided us the log, and the first thing we are seeing that they think that because of that warning, maybe they are seeing that particular issue. But the point to note is that warning has nothing to do with it, because it is only about if they want to override their infra client configuration using a client.rb file, which is optional. So even if they don't do that, that would not affect how infra client runs. Second point is they are running infra client in a local mode, so they are using the -z flag to do that and -r to specify the run list. Now the second point is if you use -r flag, that would permanently replace their run list, which they can. But ideally, we would recommend that they should use the -o as the option in this case. And if we see the bottom of that particular log, we can see that it shows that 0 out of 0 resources are updated, which means that the particular recipe does not have the actual resources. What they are trying to do is they are actually trying to create a file and add some content to that. But from the log, it means that something is wrong with that recipe. So once they have that corrected and use the particular -o option, that would solve the particular issue.
Okay. And that actually, thank you, Projecta. That is from Pratiksha, and that's from our discourse channel. Our infra topic, or Chef Infra client topic in discourse. So Projecta put it in the chat for me. So yes, Praktisha, please let us know if that has answered your question, and tune in for office hours to hear your questions answered live. Neha, were you able to share your screen, or should we just?
Well, actually, issue is it tells me to restart my browser as well, which would mean I would be dropped out again.
Oh, okay. I was afraid of that. So if you want to do that, and we can go move on to another community question since we're almost up on time.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll move on to the next one. Okay.
Um,
So, Jaka Upila from the Chef Infra Dev channel on Slack asks if there's any sort of ETA around the Amazon Linux 2023 support, or if there's anything that the community can do to help. There's an issue on GitHub that's already open about that. So who can answer this question?
I can. Since Sudarshan is not here, I'll do it. So I at the point when this question was asked, I think we were going to look at adding Amazon Linux 2022, but we're still trying to figure out getting the build boxes. And now instead of 2022, we'll just do 2023. This is not currently not planned for this PI. The PI goes on until July, so we will pick this up in the quarter after that. But yes, like if we are able to get the build boxes sorted out sooner, then this will be available sooner. But officially, not until we will not be able to pick this up until August.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sorry for the delay.
So this question I think comes from Discourse as well. The CPU quota doesn't validate from Chef Client. I'm not sure who exactly sent it, but I will find this question in Discourse and paste the answer that we come up with on this live. Who can answer this question? CPU quota does not validate from Chef Client.
So I think if you go to the next slide, there's some more detail here around this.
There we go.
Okay,
this is from Stack Overflow.
So yeah, I believe what we have going on here is there's what's it? Validation failing because we're trying to find Chef Client in like OpChef bin, and it's actually been installed elsewhere from. Actually, where is it? We're trying to find it from some other look. It's not looking in the right location for Chef Client. So I don't remember if we came up with a workaround. We need to do more investigation on this and figure out if there's.
Right now it looks like that path is hard coded in the system to unit provider. So unless we find a way to let the users give us the path for where Chef Client is installed, I think this is pretty much.
We might also look at where it's detecting just where it's running from already as a solution there too.
Yeah. Oh, as a workaround, like as long as the binary gets copied over into this path, then it'll work. So like if you're doing it from workstation, if the binary is in bin chef client, or it's installed as a gem, it's the binary is in bin chef client. If you copied that over to the op chef bin path, then this resource would just start working for now.
Awesome. That's a great workaround. Hassan from Stack Overflow. Hope this answers your question. Please also move over to our Slack channel and or Discourse. I was able to go and check Stack Overflow this time, but like usually we get our questions from those places. But so definitely check us out there. Awesome. Let's move on to the next one.
We do have a new question came in the comments.
Oh. Awesome. Chepo from YouTube asks, can you override policy files using Chef Client Zoe recipe?
That's a great question. I don't know if I know we explored that recently. I think we'll have to take that as
Good. Yeah, it's off the top of my head, you should be able to, right? Because -c means you're running in local or zero mode, which means it shouldn't be getting any kind of policy from the server at that point.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And then since he's specifying a recipe, then I would look at the local cache. So the local it would have to exist in the local cache.
Okay, does that answer your question, Chepo? Hopefully it does. And if not, just put a follow-on question in the chat. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Next question from Olive3296 from the Chef Info Client topic and discourse. She asked how to restrict IPs that can SSH. Who's got an answer for this one?
I can take this one. Since Chef Client is using as an agent based, any IP restrictions from the UFW firewall, as long as outgoing connections work, the Chef Client reaches out to Chef Server, so that won't block any Chef operations as far as that goes. And then restricting IPs, you can do it through UFW. Otherwise, there also is in the sous chefs, there's a community cookbook called Fail to Ban. And that's another one that when somebody tries like brute forcing username password after X number of tries, it will like ban that IP for so long or ban that user account. And then that's all configurable, and it'll unban it after so long, and you can then have it kind of escalate. So then if it gets banned multiple times, it can go into a forever ban or like a week-long ban or any kind of configuration like that. And that's using the Fail to Ban cookbook from sous chefs.
Okay. Shout out to the sous chefs. Thank you for answering that. Olive3296. Hopefully that answers your question sufficiently. I feel like it does. We actually might have a server question here. Okay, actually, I do see one. And let me share my screen for this one because I want to make sure to hit this server question as well. It's a pretty long one. But does anyone know how Chef Server uniquely identifies a node? There's a node name, private client key, and those are used to identify the server. If these are the only two factors used to identify a node, what stops another machine with the same node name and private key from authenticating with the server? That's the gist of the question. And that's from Jared Weir from the Chef Infra Dev channel on Slack.
Those should be the two things that the server is using to authenticate a node or uniquely identify a node. So as long as the private key gets copied over and the node name is the same, any other node should be able to connect to the server with the same credentials.
Is there a different setting for client name versus node name that might be tripping this up?
Yeah, the server would also create a client for that node if the client name wasn't the same. But
okay.
From what I think that gets created automatically, right? And it is the same as the node name. So
yeah, so the client is the piece that's used for authentication, and as long as that matches, it should. I think we might need more information to be able to answer this one. The thing that's described here really should work, so we might dig a little deeper to understand this one.
Yeah.
It sounds like reading further into this that they're wondering what would stop something from using the same node name and private key from authenticating, which in this case there is nothing, because as long as the node name client name match in Chef Server, then the PEM key will work with that. And that's oftentimes you see that issue too when people clone machines like in VMware. Now you have multiple machines checking in as the same node and then updating the object multiple times, the node object multiple times for that same node. But it sounds like you're trying to figure out how to do some sort of rebootstrapping and saving the. Is the node name changing, but the client isn't being updated on Chef server, and then that's what the PIM key I think is failing. And then I think that's where the crisscross is getting is the no name changes, but since that PEM key is registered with the previous client name, that's why she's getting an authentication error, or they're getting an authentication error.
Okay. So do we need more information, or is that, do you think the
And I mean, to fully answer and understand the problem, yeah, I think more information would help.
Okay, I'll respond in Slack, and we'll have this one on the next session. We'll get deeper into it, or maybe, as a matter of fact, we'll definitely get deeper into it on the next office hour session. However, this will probably get answered on Slack now that it has been brought up here. Like, we'll reach out to Jared on Slack and get more information about his issue. But before we wrap up, because we're a little over time, Shepo from YouTube has another question. Migrating from Chef Client 17 to Chef 18, is there anything I need to look out for? I know on Chef 18, unified mode is enabled by default.
I think the other big thing would be just if using Windows, to make sure that to use the latest version of the client, the 18.2.7. I mean, I think is the original release of, and the first two releases had the Windows issues, but everything worked fine for Linux on those.
The FIPS and the FFI actually show that Thomas Notepad. Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome, Chepo. Just hopefully that answers your question. We had some really good interaction and some really good community questions this go round. So I think this was a really successful office hour session. I really appreciate the teams for your time and coming up and being open and transparent and willing to answer questions and teach us a little bit about what's coming down the pipe. I also appreciate the community members who are out here who are viewing live and who have also sent in questions for the teams to answer. I think it takes everybody to make a good office hours session, and I really believe that this one is valuable. So kudos to everyone involved in making this a success.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you all, and we will see you all in 5 weeks. All right, bye.